Is it hard to not take it personally when your child triggers you? Because when you're parenting a PDA, autistic, or hypersensitive child, it can feel like everywhere you turn, there's another moment waiting to set something off inside of you. Within a single week, sometimes even a single day, your child might have violent aggressions towards you or hurling mean words at you. You might feel unsafe, rejected, pushed away, or completely overwhelmed by their dysregulation. And then on top of that, you're dealing with doctors or therapists who don't fully get it, who may even subtly gaslight or blame you or question what you're doing. And then there's friends, family, or community who just don't understand how hard it actually is. So, week after week, it can start to feel like a constant buildup of feeling alone, unsupported, like you and your child don't belong, feeling like you're doing everything wrong, feeling like you're failing, and somehow you're just not a good enough parent. And the hardest part, it all feels so personal. But what if I told you that what you're feeling right now is not actually about who you are today? What if it's connected to something much deeper, to 8 core wounds that were wired into your system in childhood and the meanings that you took on about yourself way back then? And what if, by understanding those wounds and slowly changing those meanings, this parenting experience could shift from feeling like one long, overwhelming, triggering cycle into something that, while still hard at times, becomes way less triggering and even deeply meaningful and fulfilling? What if I told you that working on these 8 core wounds can completely change how you see your child, how you experience your life, and more than anything, how you see and value yourself? So stay with me because today we're going to shine a light on the 8 core childhood wounds that get activated every single day when parenting a hypersensitive PDA or autistic child, so that you can finally understand what's happening inside of you and begin to feel a sense of clarity, relief, and dare I say it, even freedom. Okay, so there was a time that, during my most intense parenting challenges, okay, with my son who is PDA, autistic with OCD, and it felt like I was being triggered 100 times a day. Okay. I had no reprieve. Okay. There were so many violent outbursts. I could not eat when I needed to. I could not go to the bathroom when I needed to. I could not sleep when I wanted to or get the amount of sleep I desperately needed to be even somewhat functional. Okay. I'm just somebody who needs sleep. Okay. For my nervous system and my brain to work well. My nervous system never got a break. Okay. And it wasn't just that life was hard. Okay. It was that everything felt like it was pressing on the deepest, most vulnerable places inside of me. Okay. The doctors and therapists I worked with often, like even if unintentionally, right, they gaslit or blamed me for the challenges. I was somehow being too permissive or not hard enough, not pushing enough. And at the same time, all the training and research I had done on attachment parenting made me feel like I was somehow doing it all wrong and failing my child because he wasn't responding to those approaches the way I thought he should. Okay, so my life, it just became smaller and smaller, okay? And inside me, something deeper was happening. I felt unsafe in my own home with my own child. I felt like I could be harmed. I felt like my friends didn't love me anymore because I was so unavailable and they didn't understand how hard it was, so they slowly fell away. I felt so alone. I felt like the doctors and therapists that I was so desperate to help me, they didn't get it and were not actually able to help, so I felt unsupported. I felt like I didn't belong in a world that I already often felt I didn't belong in anymore. Okay, we were different. And somehow, in the deeper layers of my nervous system, that difference started to feel like it meant something about me, about us, like we were bad, wrong, failing, unlovable, unsuccessful. And this is how so many parents in this kind of parenting come to me feeling, okay? Everything feels personal, right? Not just difficult, not just exhausting, but personal. And if what your child does, how the world responds, what supports you do or do not get, and how your life has changed all means something. It feels like all of this, right? Everything your child does and about everything, the way the world responds to you, about how you don't have the support and how your life has changed, that it all means something painful and all comes down to meaning something painful and condemning about who you are, right? That's how we end up taking it in. Okay, and that's what I want to talk about here. Because when we understand why this kind of parenting feels so personal, okay, we can begin to stop fighting ourselves so much, which all of us do. Okay, we can start to see what is actually being activated. And from there, we can begin to create real freedom, which I know is what all of you want. Okay. And it's not because the challenges magically disappear, okay? It's because we are no longer living only from these old wounds and meanings that these challenges keep activating within us, okay? So let's just understand a little bit more about why this kind of parenting feels so personal, okay? Because this is what every parent says. I try not to take it personally, but I can't help it. It feels personal. And when you're parenting a PDA, high needs child, PDA, autistic, OCD, high anxiety, hypersensitive, it doesn't just challenge your parenting skills, it challenges your entire nervous system. Okay, it touches your sense of safety, your identity, gets questioned, your belonging feels like it's gone, your worth feels like it's gone, your ability to cope, your hope for the future, and your deepest beliefs about yourself. All of this gets touched. Okay, and the day-to-day realities of this kind of parenting, they're not neutral. They hit places in us that were already vulnerable long before our child is born. So this is what I'm going to invite you to take in right now, because we often think it's our child's behaviors that are causing us to react so intensely. Okay. And yes, of course, the behaviors matter, right? The behaviors can make us react intensely. There's truth to that. Okay. Of course, the circumstances are hard. Okay. But what often makes our reactions feel so overwhelming is not just what's happening in front of us with our child. It's not just this present situation. It's that the present situation is activating unresolved wounds and trauma from the past. Okay, so our children are often showing us what still feels threatened, what is still unhealed, what is still unfinished in our own systems. Okay, so this does not, I want to say that, our child's behavior does not mean that they're doing something wrong, right? They're triggering all of this in us, and so they're doing something wrong by having needs and struggles and meltdowns or nervous system challenges. It means that their behavior and life situation surrounding it, right? And the life situation surrounding their behaviors, like what ends up happening to our life, it can press directly on these meanings that we made about ourselves from childhood. Okay. So keep in mind, these are childhood meanings. This is why it feels so personal. Okay. When those meanings are activated, we do not just have thoughts, or we do not go to like, oh, yeah, that was like a childhood wound that happened to me. Instead, we have like real physical reactions that are happening in our body, right? We have body memories that come up, emotional flashbacks. We launch into these protective reactions that are part of protecting us from feeling that wound, right? That we never got to use in the past to protect that wound as a child. We have survival responses that show up, okay? This is why it's so important to gain awareness of our programming. And these childhood wounds are part of that, because it can become so liberating, okay? Like, so many parents feel trapped and stuck in this kind of parenting, right? Like, I can't tell you how many parents come to me feeling trapped and stuck. They feel like they have no control over their child, no control over their future, no control over their own chronic reactions, right, to the child in the life situation. But when we get clear on what's being triggered, okay, where we learned it, right? These meanings we made about ourselves, like the meanings that we took on about ourselves, where we learned it, then we move into a different place. Okay, we move into clarity, right? The brain likes clarity. It likes to understand, why am I being triggered? And then from clarity, we can begin to shift. Okay, and this is where freedom begins, my friends. Freedom is being free from these 8 core wounds, or really changing and rewiring these 8 core wounds. So let's get into it, okay? So there are 8 core wounds that get activated. So on a foundational level, we all need certain developmental experiences in order to build a solid internal sense of self, okay? This happens from childhood, right? And ideally, we get the right kind of caregiving that help us build these, but most of us didn't have that, okay? So one is we need to feel safe, okay? Then we need to feel loved, and we need to feel wanted. That's another one. We need to feel that our needs matter. We need to feel supported. We need to feel like we belong, okay? And we need to feel that who we are is enough, okay? So according to attachment experts, the core developmental self states that create secure attachment, which then create a more secure nervous system that can handle challenges better, are 3 things, okay? I am loved, I am wanted, and my needs are important, or I matter, okay? And so much of healing our nervous system is really about learning to meet and repair unfulfilled attachment needs that never got fully met in childhood. Okay, so we can think of this as core needs that when we don't get them, right, it creates a void in our nervous system. And this void, it craves to be filled by our adult self today. Okay. And so, in a sense, we're reparenting ourselves now. We're changing the experience on a felt sense level and slowly shifting the meanings that our brain took on about being unloved, unwanted, unsupported, unprotected, or not enough. And then we are building something new back into our systems from the body up. Okay, when those developmental needs are not met consistently enough, then what happens? We adapt, and not always in a functional way, okay? Some people call it maladaptive. It's still adaptive, okay? But it can be dysfunctional in some way, right? We form these beliefs and meanings about who we are and what we need to do in order to stay safe, connected, accepted, or valued, okay? And we form these chronic stress patterns, right, to fulfill that feeling. And then, those beliefs become the lens through which we experience life, okay, especially parenting. Okay, so here are the 8 core wounds that, in my experience, get activated again and again in this kind of parenting. Okay, so I see this again and again. So the first core belief is I am not safe. Okay, and remember, this is on a felt sense levels, not in your head, because in your head, you're going to say, well, I feel safe in life, like I'm safe, but this is your body. Okay, so this wound, okay, it forms when you were a child, no one protected you. Okay, when caregivers were either unsafe or harmful themselves, okay, or there was chaos around you, there was unpredictability, fear, emotional volatility, or a chronic sense that the world was not secure. Okay, so trauma, right? Things that cause trauma here. And when this wound gets activated, okay, your child's violent outbursts, their aggression, their intensity, their unpredictability, it can feel like real danger in your system. Okay, it doesn't just feel like hard behavior. Okay, it's not just a difficult moment, it can feel like real danger. Okay, so your body may brace, it may freeze, it may panic, it may rage, may become more hypervigilant over time because it's not only responding to what's happening right now with your child's behavior, it's also responding to everything that has ever felt like this before, right? It's on a felt sense. It's not always on a story sense, okay? It's on a felt sense that this, in some way, this experience with your child feels like what happened in the past and that lack of safety. So if you are not protected in your childhood, or if one of your own caregivers or family members harmed you, then your child's dysregulation can unconsciously press on that exact place and trigger this wound. Okay, it can feel like it's happening all over again and you lose yourself, right? And on at some very old level, it's younger parts of you that can now experience your child as the one bringing back that old feeling of being unsafe and unprotected. Okay, so that's number one, right? I am not safe. Number two is I am not loved for who I truly am. Okay, so I am not loved, and I put in brackets here for who I truly am, because it's always about wanting to be loved for who you truly are in any moment, and how you show up, okay, in that moment. Okay, and this wound forms when love felt conditional. Okay, when you had to be a certain way to be accepted, when your real feelings, needs, personality, or sensitivity were too much, or not enough, or inconvenient, or unacceptable. Okay, then you learn I am not loved just as I am. I must shape myself in order to receive love. Okay, and then that becomes a protective measure, right? You shape yourself in order to receive love, instead of just feeling like I'm loved for who I am, as how I show up as I am. Okay, so then when your child rejects you or says mean things or pushes you away or seems unable to receive your care in a warm and reciprocal way, which is a lot of our kids, then it can hit something very old. It can feel like proof that you're not lovable. Okay, not because it's true, but because this is the old meaning that your system already knows how to reach for. Okay, and our brains are predictive, right? It's going to pull up the old meaning we took on before, and it's going to look at our situation in front of us, and it's going to take it in that according to the old meaning. Okay, so and also like when others don't accept or understand your child, that's another big one, right? They don't accept or understand your child and their challenges, and they judge them or they judge you. And then this can make you feel like your child is not accepted or loved for who they truly are. Then you're not accepted or loved for who you truly are. And all of it is just so painful. Okay. But not only because they are your child or for what is happening in the present moment, but also because it's triggering this old wound and this belief that you took on, that I am not loved. Okay, so number three core wound is I am all alone. Okay, and this is the wound of emotional isolation. Okay, it's not just about being physically by yourself, it's about feeling that no one sees you, no one understands you, no one is truly with you in what you are going through. Okay, and you're left all alone with these big emotions and sensations with no one there to help you with them. Okay, this is such a common wound in this kind of parenting. Friends fall away because you cannot be there. You cannot be there for them in the same way anymore. Your life becomes hard to explain to others. You know, other parents, they just don't get it, right? Family may not understand, which is even more hurtful. And even if people care, you can still feel profoundly alone in your actual lived reality. Okay. And this wound gets activated again and again because this kind of parenting can actually create very real isolation. Okay. It's not all in your head, right? The experience of being more alone is often real. Okay. Which is why this work has to hold both truths, right? The outer reality that, yeah, this can be a very isolating experience, parenting kids like ours, and then we feel alone with it. But also, the other truth is that the inner wound is getting activated with it. Okay. And if you hold that inner wound, then you will see your situations more in this way of I'm all alone. Okay, so number four is I'm not supported. And which goes with that is my needs don't matter. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I have felt this. Oh my goodness. Okay. So this wound comes from having needs that were not met, seen, prioritized, or protected when you were a child. Okay. It comes from learning that there is no one to lean on, no one to truly hold you, no one to meet you where you are. Okay. And then you over time, right? This can become the belief that my needs don't matter. I have to handle everything myself. If I want support, I have to overfunction, overgive, over explain, or over carry, right? And on a felt sense, we don't get wired in with that felt sense of just feeling supported, right? Someone supports us or the universe has our back. Okay, then parenting a high needs child presses directly on this wound, right? You're caring so much for them, holding so much, doing so much, and often it really does feel like there is no one there in the way that you need. Okay, professionals may miss the mark, your partner may not understand, family may minimize, the support you long for may simply not be there. So, of course, this wound gets activated, right? I'm not supported. My needs don't matter, right? Think about how much you co regulate your child all day, feel exhausted at the end of it, feel like you couldn't even meet your own basic needs. That was me for a long time. So I get it. Okay, so number 5 core wound is I am not enough. Oh, this is a big one. This is a deep one. This goes to the depth of so many things that we feel with our kids. I'm not a good enough parent, right? This wound is about conditional worth. It is the belief that who you are, what you are doing, and what you can offer is somehow not enough. Okay? You're not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough, not good looking or slim enough, not calm enough, not strong enough. Okay, parenting a child whose needs are intense, shifting, complex, and often not responsive to standard approaches can light this wound up constantly, right? Because you're trying everything. You can do everything that you know to do and still feel like you're coming up short, right? You compare yourself to other parents, compare your child to other children, compare your life to what you thought it would be, and arrive over and over again at the same painful conclusion. I am not enough. Okay. And then you start to see your child through that lens too, because the reality is, whatever lens you see yourself through, you often see your child through that lens, even if you don't consciously recognize it, right? So if you don't feel enough, then you're not going to see your child as enough either. Okay. And I'm going to challenge you with this because I know I've been through this. I've dug deep into this work. And what if I see my child in a certain way, it's almost always 100% the reason is because I hold that belief about myself. Okay. Okay. So number 6, I am bad, wrong, or failing. Okay. And this is a shame wound. It goes beyond inadequacy and into feeling like it's your identity. Okay. It's not just like, oh, I didn't do well, I did something wrong, right? It goes into something is wrong with me. Okay. And this gets activated so much of this kind of parenting. Oh my God, I've had huge shame wounds from my own childhood that have gotten activated so much, right? With doctors, with therapists, family members, teachers, even my husband, even strangers that imply that you are somehow doing it wrong. It gets activated when nothing seems to work, when the approaches you believed in don't seem to help, okay? When you lose your temper, right? When your child is struggling and when the world reflects back some version of, you should be handling this better, then this old shame floods in of, I am bad, I am wrong, I am failing. Okay, but that's a core wound that also comes from your childhood. Okay. Number 7 core wound is I don't belong. Okay, this wound is about being outside of the circle, right? Outside of what is accepted, welcomed, mirrored, or normalized, right? That dreaded word, normalized, for parents like us. Okay. This this one can become very loud in parenting a PDA, autistic, or hypersensitive child because your family may simply not fit into many of the spaces and rhythms that other families move through more easily, right? So you may have to stop going to certain places. You may not be able to invite people over. That's been us for years. Outings may become impossible, right? School may not work for your child. Community may feel inaccessible. And if you already carried a wound of not belonging, then this can intensify it tremendously. Okay, you may feel like there is no place for you, no place for you in this world as you are living it, right? There's no place for your child, no place for your family. You feel outcasted by society and all of the experts that you are trying to go to for help, and you just feel like you don't belong. Okay. Okay. The number 8 is I am powerless. And then in brackets here is I have no control, right? No agency, no control. I'm powerless. Okay. And this is the wound of having no choice, no say, no agency, right? No real control over what is happening to you. Okay. And this can come from childhood experiences where you felt trapped, overpowered, ignored, or forced to endure what you could not change. Okay. So this is a big one from childhood and trauma. Okay. Because then parenting a high needs child activates it constantly because you cannot control your child's nervous system or their reactions, right? You cannot force them to regulate. You cannot force them to access skills in the moment. You cannot predict every outburst. You cannot control whether professionals will understand, right? Especially the school system. That one's so hard. You cannot control whether the world will accommodate your child, and you cannot control how your life has changed because of it. So then this can feel unbearable to a nervous system that learned to rely on control to feel safe, right? I can't tell you how many parents come to me, and I'm included in this. I tried everything possible to control, 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 and then would fall to powerless, 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 right? And this is why rage, shutdown, panic, and resentment can build, okay? Because underneath them is often a very old wound of powerlessness, okay? So it's really important to understand those 8 core wounds, okay? And if you're feeling heavy right now after I've talked about those 8 core wounds, just take a moment, okay, to look far, do a little stretch, okay, do a little bit of movement, okay. Do not freeze because your system may have gone to freeze, but help yourself come out of it with a little bit of movement right now, okay, and a little bit of grounding. Feel yourself in the here and now. Feel your feet on the floor, feel your sit bones in the chair, whatever you're doing, feel yourself in the present now, okay? Okay. So let's talk about the protective patterns that grow out of these wounds, okay? Because once these wounds get wired in, so you may not recognize, right, that these are the beliefs I'm living by, but sometimes we can recognize it by the way these protective reactions that it's what human beings always do, right? We try to protect ourselves. So we go into and we develop, instead of understanding the wound underneath, we develop these patterns and habits and survival strategies to help us not feel those wounds so directly. Okay, so we do everything possible, right, to feel safe, loved, supported, accepted, and enough. Okay, so let's understand how this happens, right? So for example, if the wound is safety, right, I'm not safe, with which most of us consciously will say, well, I feel safe. Now some of us really will say, I don't feel safe with my child. But some of us will say, okay, I feel safe. Like, what are you talking about? I feel safe. Like, yeah, your mind, okay, but not your body. So this is how it will show up. You become overly cautious, okay? Or you become more hyper vigilant, right? Always watching your child's reaction, always trying to preempt, get in there, try to change the situation before they react. So that's hypervigilance, right? Always scanning for what's going on, listening hypervigilantly. Okay, controlling, right? Always controlling things around you, needing to have control over so many things around you. Okay, preparing yourself for every possible outcome, right? Constantly scanning for danger. Okay, so those are ways that this wound of safety can show up. But now there's a protective pattern trying to help you feel safe. So if the wound is love, okay, we may become people pleasers, right? Overly compliant, self-abandoning, shape-shifting in order to feel accepted by others, okay, and even by our child, right? And if the wound is aloneness, we may keep ourselves busy, keep ourselves surrounded by people, or keep ourselves constantly on, right? Scrolling social media, as being online, overworking, or we may overextend toward relationships so that we do not have to feel the emptiness underneath of this alone feeling. Okay, then if the wound is a lack of support, right? I'm not supported. My needs don't matter. I'm not supported. We may overgive, over support others, okay, make ourselves indispensable, or become the strong one who never needs anything, right? Hyper independent. Yeah, that was me too. Both of those. Okay, if the wound is feeling like you're not enough, okay, then you may overwork, overlearn, overfocus on productivity, appearance, achievement, knowledge, researching, right? Image or performance in order to feel worthy. Okay, so these protective patterns make sense. They're not random. They're intelligent adaptations. Your system did the best it could to learn to survive so that you could feel the opposite of those 8 core wounds. But it's good to recognize these, because in this kind of parenting, it has a way of like exposing all of these patterns, because these usual ways of protecting ourselves from not feeling those 8 core wounds and feeling the opposite of them, right? It often stops working the way it used to. And so it's no longer working for us. And so now it's really prompting us to heal this and change this. Okay, but let's understand first where this shows up in your everyday life, because I really want to drive this home for you, okay? And have this all come together for you and really understanding how this is showing up for you in your daily life. Because it's not just that these wounds exist inside of you, okay? It's not just that your child's behavior can trigger one of them at a time. It's that this kind of parenting environment has a way of activating multiple wounds at once, over and over again, and often many times a day. And that's why it could get so overwhelming in our kind of parenting. Okay, when that happens, it doesn't just feel like, oh, one clear emotion or one clear thing. It feels like everything, which is overwhelm. Okay, so when your child has, so here's some examples, okay? When your child has violent outbursts, aggressive behavior, or intense dysregulation, then your body can go into this full threat response. Okay, this isn't just a stressful parenting moment. It can feel like your safety is at risk. Okay, you may feel like you could be harmed, like you can't relax in your own home, like you're constantly bracing for what might happen next, right? You have this like overly sensitive startle response too, like everything feels like in its emergency, right? Okay. And then if you have a history, here's another example. If you have a history of not being protected, then this can go, sorry, this is not another example. This is just going deeper into the safety example. If you have a history of not being protected, this can go even deeper, okay? Your system may not fully register that this is your child in front of you. Instead, it pulls from a much older place that simply knows this feeling, right? That this isn't safe. This isn't safe. And then it becomes, the meaning becomes that my child is the one causing this. They're not safe. But it really, I've seen this over and over again. You heal that underlying feeling of not feeling safe that came from the earlier trauma, and all of a sudden, everything changes in the way that you see your child. Okay? Okay. At the very same time, there can be another layer running underneath, okay, of all of this. It's a sense of powerlessness, right? Because you can't control when it happens, you can't always stop it, and you can't predict it. So now it's not just fear, it's mixed with helplessness, right? Okay, then there are moments outside your home, right? Okay, moments outside your home. These are the hardest ones when your child is severely dysregulated in public, when meltdowns happen in front of others, when people stare or judge or dismiss or misunderstand or even subtly shun you or your child, right? Then something else begins to stack on top. Okay, you may start to feel like you're doing it all wrong, like you should be able to handle this better, like other parents don't struggle like this. And even if no one says anything directly, right, your system fills in the gaps, right? You feel exposed, you feel judged, you feel like you and your child are not accepted as you are. And then suddenly it's not just about this moment, it's about what this moment feels like it means about you. Okay. And then those meanings, they didn't come out of nowhere. Okay. They come from beliefs that were formed much earlier in your life, right? For many parents, this is also like where interactions with doctors or therapists or professionals can become incredibly activating, right? You go to them for help, for guidance, for support, but instead you may leave feeling blamed, misunderstood, or subtly criticized. So maybe you're told you're too permissive or not firm enough or not doing enough or doing too much. And even if it's not said directly, the implication can land hard, okay, because it connects to something old. Experiences when you were young, where you were blamed or misunderstood or not supported in the way that you needed. Okay. That feeling of being wrong, of being judged, of not being supported in the way you actually need. Okay. So now it's not just about your child. Okay. It's about feeling like there is no one truly in your corner. It becomes personal, right? And then there is like the slow and often painful shift that happens in your relationships from this experience, right? Friends who used to be close may drift away, not always because they don't care, but because like your capacity to show up for them has changed, your life has changed. The things that you can do and the places you can go, the way you connect, it's all different now, right? So over time, that creates a very real sense of isolation. And you may find yourself thinking, no one really understands this. No one sees how hard this is. I'm carrying this all on my own. Okay, so even if there are people around you, you can still feel completely alone in your actual experience. And if aloneness was something you felt earlier in your life, if it's a wound that got programmed into your system, right? Then this brings that feeling back very quickly. Okay. So then look at, okay, within your own home, right? The dynamics in your own home can become just as complex. So when your child says mean things or rejects you or pushes you away, it can hit deeply. Okay. Not just because the words hurt, but because of what they seem to say about your relationship, right? It's the meanings that you're making about yourself, right? That you made about yourself in the past that get triggered. And if your partner questions your approach or disagrees with how you're handling things or places blame on you, that can add another layer. Okay, now it's not just your child's behavior, it's the meaning your system is making about it all. That I am unsupported, I am all alone, I am not enough, I am bad, wrong, failing, I am not loved, I do not belong. And all of this can happen in seconds because your system is not just reacting to what's being said now, it's reacting to what those words have meant to you before. Okay. And then underneath so many of these moments is a quiet but persistent sense of not belonging. Okay. You may not be able to participate in the same activities as other families. You may stop going places. You may avoid gatherings. School may not be working. Outings may feel impossible. Your life starts to look different. Okay. And if you already carried a wound around belonging, then this can amplify it in a very real way. It could feel like there's no place for us here. We don't fit anywhere. And running through all of this is the thread of powerlessness. You can't control your child's nervous system. You cannot control how others respond. You cannot control how quickly things change. You cannot control whether support shows up in the way you need. And for a system that learned early on that control creates safety, this can feel overwhelming, right? So then sometimes it comes out as rage, sometimes as shutdown, sometimes as exhaustion, numbness, or burnout. But underneath it is often the same feeling. There is no way out of this moment. Okay, a feeling Your system may have learned long before this parenting experience ever began. Okay. So, what happens is this: your child's behavior, your life circumstances, your relationships, and the lack of understanding from others all come together to activate multiple wounds at once. And when that happens, your system doesn't experience it as separate pieces, it experiences it as one overwhelming state. No wonder we are all overwhelmed by this experience. Okay. So, what's important to understand is this: that none of these reactions are random. They are your nervous system connecting the present moment to meanings that were formed in the past. So, I really want you to take that in, okay? Because 90% of our present day reactions have to do with the past, only 10% has to do with the present. Okay, when those meanings get activated over and over again, it doesn't just feel like stress, it feels like something is wrong with you. Okay, it's not just that these wounds are being activated, it's that this kind of parenting often strips away many of the strategies that you once used to feel okay. Okay, because they're not working anymore, right? The things you use to cope, regulate, or find relief don't always work in the same way anymore. So it's not just about you being too sensitive, right? It's that your nervous system is responding exactly as it was wired to. Okay, this is why the reactions can feel so big, and this is why the emotions can feel so intense. This is why the experience can feel relentless, and this is why it feels so personal, so darn personal. Because in the middle of all this, your brain is doing what it was designed to do. It's trying to make meaning. It's trying to answer the question, what does this say about me? Okay. And then, so without awareness of these deeper wounds, right? The only answers your brain will give you is that it's that, that it, that the only answers your brain will give you is that something is wrong with you, right? Because it draws upon the old meanings of the past, right? The old beliefs, the old meanings, the old conclusions that your brain made about you a long time ago. Okay, that's the predictive model of the brain. It's going to predict what's happening now by inputting it into the beliefs and the core meanings we already have, right? So your only options of, your brain's going to say, what does this mean about me? It's going to be, well, it means that somehow I'm failing, I'm doing it wrong, I'm all alone, or any of the 8 core wounds, right? Or it starts to connect this feeling, right? And this present circumstance to be all about it's because of your challenging child, right? The meaning it connects that it's because of your challenging child. And then that's more painful, right? Than making the meaning about us. Okay, because we cannot change our child, right? We cannot control them. So, but once you begin to see this clearly, okay, something starts to shift because now instead of being completely inside the experience, taken over by it, and you start to understand it. Okay. And that understanding, it was what creates the first opening. Okay. The first bit of space, the first step towards doing something different with what gets activated inside of you. Okay. So I just want to get a little more into why it feels so personal. I know I've said it a lot. I've talked a lot about it. It's the 8 core wounds, right? But this is an important part to name because so many parents already carry shame about how they personally take things, right? So they know intellectually that their child is struggling. Okay, they know that their child is not trying to wound them or hurt them on purpose. They know that they shouldn't take it so personally. And yet they do, right? You do. Of course you do. Okay? It makes complete sense that it feels personal. So I just want to validate you here for a moment because it's so important to validate ourselves and understand that it makes complete sense that we take it personally. But it's not personal because in some ways it is personal, right? But it's not personal in terms of the truth of who you are today. That's the important thing to understand here. It's not personal in terms of the truth of who you are today. Okay? But it's more personal in terms of what your nervous system has lived before. Okay? Our brains are meaning-making organs, and under stress, they move quickly to interpret what is happening and what it means for us. right? Attachment wounds do the same thing, right? Early in life, we form deep assumptions around questions like, am I safe? Am I loved? Do I matter? Will anyone help me? Do I belong here? And then later, when something in the present resembles those earlier emotional experiences, the brain reaches for the old meanings and fast, right? So when your child is dysregulated, rejecting, aggressive, out of control, or when the life situation around their needs is chaotic and overwhelming, your system does not only see the current event, it also starts searching for meaning. What does this mean about me, about my worth, my lovability, my adequacy, my goodness, my belonging, my future? So yes, it feels personal because your present pain is linking to your past meanings. But here is the reframe that matters so much, okay? What feels personal is not necessarily true in the present, okay? It is personal to the past, okay? It is personal to the old wound. It is personal to the younger parts of you that learn painful meanings in order to survive, but is not the truth of who you are now. Okay, your child's behavior is not a reflection of your worth. Okay, it is not proof that you are failing. It is not evidence that you are bad, unlovable, unsupported, or not enough. And if you continue to take everything personally in the present, then you stay fused with those old meanings. You stay trapped inside the old wound. This is why learning not to take things personally today is so important. Okay, not because you're supposed to become like this detached and cold or unaffected person. Okay, it's not because your feelings are wrong, but because freedom requires being able to separate what is being activated from what is actually true. Okay, so when you can begin to say, oh, this feels personal because it is touching something old in me, but it is not defining me in this moment, then you create space. And in that space, you create choice. And this is where your freedom lies. Okay, so let's get into working with what gets triggered, okay? How do you work with this, right? The goal is not to never get triggered, okay? In this kind of parenting, you will get triggered, right? Your child's gonna have different challenges throughout their lifetime. You're gonna get triggered, okay? So let's just allow for that. But the goal is to become more aware of what is happening inside of you, right? That's making you react in this way so that you're not only living from this old wound every time it gets activated, that you have some awareness and clarity of what's getting activated inside of you and not be so identified with that core wound. That's the key here. You do not want to be so identified with the core wound, okay? You want to be more identified with the truth than the core wound of the past. Okay, so number one, awareness comes first. In every situation, the first step is to become aware that you are triggered, right? And that sounds simple, but it is profound and it is a practice to engage in, right? Because once you recognize that you are activated and you can become aware of it and you can be with it instead of taken over by it, then you're no longer fused with the experience. Okay, there is already a little bit of witnessing, a little bit of separation, a little bit of space. Okay, so first awareness comes first. Become aware of when you're triggered. Then the second thing is you do the U-turn. Okay, instead of focusing on your child, which your fight flight system will want to focus on your child, you do the U-turn. Practice the U-turn. Come back towards yourself. Go inside, right? Do some regulation tools if you can, and then ask, what am I believing about myself in this situation? Okay, what am I afraid will happen here that is making me react this way, right? What am I afraid will happen if I don't react this way? Okay, so first, what am I believing about myself in the situation? What am I afraid will happen that's making me react this way? And what meaning am I making about myself right now? Okay, and you just like you ask those questions inside and you just stay quiet and you wait and see if it connects to one of the core wounds, right? Of am I feeling unsafe, unlovable, alone, unsupported, not enough, bad or failing, outside of belonging or powerless, right? See if it connects to one of those core wounds because this is where so much clarity can start to emerge, okay? So investigate further, okay? Once you notice the wound, so number 3 is investigate further, okay? So once you notice the wound or the belief, then you gently ask yourself, you go even deeper, you ask yourself, where did I learn this? Okay, where did I take in this meaning? Where did I learn this? Where did I take in this meaning? Okay, then you wait. You let it come to you without thinking about it. Okay. And then sometimes the answer will come as words, sometimes as an image or a memory or a felt sense in the body. Okay. And all of it counts. Okay. And it's important to understand that some meanings can get wired in before the age of 3, before we had language or could put a story to it or words to it. Right. So sometimes what is stored is not a clear story. It's a body feeling, an emotion, an energetic imprint, maybe even an image. Okay. But over time, that felt sense becomes a word-based meaning that, like a meaning that that lives inside our system every day. Okay. That we're living every day. So it's important to investigate further, because the more clarity you have, okay, the more your brain will relax and say, no, okay, I get now where this is coming from. Okay, then you want to validate, and you want to give yourself like validation and recognize the context, right? Because the brain likes context to feel safe. So this part matters so much, okay? So you say things like, okay, of course this makes sense. Of course this is here. Of course I react this way. Okay? This was taken on by a younger version of me who had very little choice and had to make sense of what was happening somehow. Okay? And now as an adult, when you understand the who, what, when, where, why of your triggering, the brain gets context, the nervous system gets context, and context creates safety. So suddenly you're not just drowning in a reaction, you are understanding it, and understanding it is liberating. Okay, number 5, choose what you would rather believe. Okay, once there is awareness and clarity, you are no longer only inside the old programming, you are in a place of choice. Okay, then you can ask, what would I rather believe about myself? What would support me? Okay, what would be more life affirming? What would help me today with my child? Okay, usually it is some form of a belief and a feeling that goes like the opposite of the 8 core wounds, right? It is instead, I am safe. I can protect myself. I am loved. I am enough and worthy. I am supported. I can support myself. My needs matter. I belong. I have power. I have choice. I can be who I truly am. I can express myself authentically. I can love myself for who I am. Okay, this is where real change begins. Okay, and then number 6, work with the body, not just the mind. Okay, this is so important because this work cannot be done through the mind alone. Okay, yes, some of us can be very good, right, at shifting a lot with awareness and thought alone. But many of us, the body also has to feel something different. Okay, these wounds were not only made through ideas, they were made through lived experience, nervous system states, and blocked fight flight responses, repeated emotions, and the felt sense of not being safe, loved, held, or supported enough. Okay. So the body has to be included, right? We want the felt sense of these feelings, of these core beliefs to be felt in the body. This is why body-based regulation, somatic work, using orienting, grounding, movement, touch, breath, and all the work of helping the body feel safer matters so much. Okay. We're not just changing thoughts, we are changing the felt sense experience in the body too. Okay. And next, we want to rebuild new meanings in the body, right? So showing up truly regulated and actually feeling okay with this life in our child requires more than just understanding these wounds. Yes, we want to understand them. We want to gain clarity that this is what's causing the reaction in the present and not actually my child's behavior as so much, right? It requires slowly building new meanings back into our systems and truly feeling them in our bodies, right? So insight is not enough on its own. The nervous system changes through felt sense experience. So these old wounds, okay, they were built through repeated experiences that seem to confirm painful beliefs, right? So healing requires repeated experiences that begin to confirm something different. So here are the 8 meanings that we want to build now as adults, right? So in the safety category, it's I am safe. In the love category, it's I am loved. In the support category, it's I am supported and my needs matter. In the that category of feeling all alone instead of connection, it's I am connected. Okay? In the feeling worthy or successful category is I am enough, right? Our feeling worthy category is I am enough. In the shame repair, to repair shame, it's about I am a good person and parent. Okay. In terms of competence, we want to build in I am capable, I am successful. In terms of belonging, we want to build in the felt sense of I belong. And in terms of agency, we want to build in the felt sense that I have power and choice. Okay, these are not just affirmations to say mechanically, they are experienced to build, feel, and reinforce over time. Okay, so I use havening a lot in my practice and in my course, The Regulation Rebuild, to build new meanings. Okay, this is one of the reasons I love havening so much, because it's a psychosensory mind body modality that uses moving touch on the hands, on the arms, and on the face to help create more safety in the body while opening space for new meanings to be received more deeply in the brain. Okay, so one gentle way to work with havening is through these what if prompts, right? Say very curiously, like, and while applying havening touch on your arms, let's say, or on your hands or on your face, what if I am safe right now? What if I am supported? What if my needs matter too? What if I am loved just as I am? What if I am enough? What if I belong? Okay, what if I have more power and choice than I feel in this moment? Okay, notice we are not forcing anything. Okay, we are not arguing with the nervous system and the past meanings that the brain says is truth. Okay, we are opening the door to possibility and allowing the body to begin experiencing something new. Okay, and then another simple daily practice to help the brain update is that you can, uh, it's very simple, okay, but it's profound. You help the brain notice when you are safe, right? A moment of safety. Look in your environment and notice that it's safe here, right? Notice something you appreciate. Help your brain notice when you feel enough and worthy. So when you do feel good about yourself, when you do feel loved or you feel supported, notice when you notice that, right? Or when you do feel like you've done a good job, notice when or you do feel like you're successful in some way, notice it, even if it's something very small, because these moments matter, right? A moment of connection, uh, or love with our child, feeling like, it builds in that felt sense of I am loved and connected, or getting through something hard. Then afterwards, you take a moment to notice that I am capable, I'm successful, I'm good enough. Okay, or a feeling of pride, I am enough as I am, or a feeling of steadiness, or a moment you feel capable, feel that I am capable. Okay, a moment where you advocate for yourself, you feel like, okay, my needs matter and I can support myself. When you notice these moments, pause and feel it for at least 30 seconds. Okay, let it land. Notice how it feels in your body. Let your body take it in, because this helps update your brain that you are having new experiences now, that experiences that validate taking on the new belief that counters the old core belief. Okay. And when you do this daily, over time, your brain starts to self fulfill these beliefs more naturally. It begins to notice more evidence for them. It begins to organize around them. It begins to expect them more. Okay. This is how neuroplasticity works in a lived and embodied way, right? Not by force, but by repetition, by attention, and letting good experiences actually register. Okay. So when we do this work, something starts to change, right? There's really like this bigger gift inside all of this triggering. Okay. The same challenges may still be there. The same life may still be hard in many ways, right? But they do not land the same way inside of us. There's more awareness, more context, more space, more choice. And there's less automatic personalization, right? Less shame, less fusion with old meanings. Okay, and over time, something beautiful begins to emerge. Okay, this is what I love about this experience. It is hard as heck, but there is gain in this, my friends. There is gain, okay? We begin to realize that our child is not creating these wounds. They are revealing the wounds. They are showing us where the past is still living in the present. Okay? They are showing us what still needs tenderness, care, regulation, truth, and healing inside of us. Okay? That does not make this path easy, but it does make it meaningful, and it does turn loss into gain. Because when we keep doing this work, we begin to feel something many parents have not felt in a very long time. And that is, I am okay. Nothing is wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with my child. I belong here. Okay. My child belongs here. And from that place, our child starts to become something more than just the source of our triggering. They become an unexpected guide, okay, a mirror, a catalyst, a gift in the deepest sense. And not because the struggle itself is a gift, but because what it reveals and how it helps us to change and how it helps us to step into more of who we truly are, right? It reveals all that and makes it possible of who we can be in this life circumstance. So this path helps us live more from more free from old wounds, okay? More free from old meanings, more free from the identities we built around being unsafe, unloved, unsupported, not enough, bad, not belonging, or powerless, okay? It can bring us into greater clarity, greater awareness, greater compassion, and greater truth. And I've heard this over and over again from parents who graduate my course, The Regulation Rebuild, okay? This is real freedom, okay? Not perfection, not never getting triggered again, not controlling everything, but freedom from living inside meanings that were never the full truth of who we are to begin with. And when that happens, we do not just parent differently, we live differently. We see ourselves differently. We experience our child differently. We experience this life differently. And that, my friends, it changes everything. So if this spoke to you, if this resonated with you, if this helped you in some way, please comment, please share with other parents. And I just want to thank you for being here doing this hard work. It's not easy, but you're here and you're doing it. So thank you for that.